Thanks, Dwan. In order to get started, Alexa, would you please do the housekeeping?
Yeah, definitely. Great. Welcome committee.
Sorry.
Committee. Oh, yes.
I was just going to crack a joke. I wish that worked at my house. Sorry. Sorry.
No, it's totally okay. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin at 1:05. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raised hand feature. To use the raised hand feature by phone, dial *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand and do the same to lower your hand. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. Going forward, all Legal Services Trust Fund Committee and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference, and please be aware of your surroundings behind you. Troubleshooting. For those using Zoom on a computer, when on mute, holding down the space bar will temporarily unmute. If you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure to use your computer's microphone. Please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. While joining audio via computer is highly recommended, if an individual loses audio, they can call in separately using the Zoom conference number.
Hey, Brady, can I make a suggestion? Since Zoom is here to stay, can you guys, you gave the speech beautifully, but can you guys figure out a way to avoid this speech? Because we're going to do this for the next 20 years before every meeting. I mean, you know, maybe post it somewhere.
We can abbreviate it, but the thing is, like, if they're members of the public and they watch our recording, maybe we can think about shortening it, but it's, yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Okay, great. So once again, my name is Jennifer Zelnick. I'm a senior program analyst in the Office of Access and Inclusion, and I'll be filling in for Chris McConkey today. Jim, would you mind calling the meeting to order, please?
You're on mute, Jim.
Call the meeting to order, and let's have a roll call.
Wonderful. Meeker.
Here.
Aklagi. Iskin.
Here.
Mahoney. Schreiber.
Here.
Okay, we have reached quorum. Jim, is it okay if I do the roll call for liaisons and staff?
Sure.
Thank you. Brown.
I think she's here. She's on mute though, Jennifer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
That's okay. Copeland. Huff. Snyder.
Yes, and I know that some of you know this, but Bonnie's going to be retiring at the end of December, so just want to make sure we don't miss that. But anyways, okay, thanks.
Thank you. And for staff, Dewar. Nguyen.
Here.
McConkey.
That was it here.
Thanks, Brady. Montalvo.
Here.
And Zelnick is here. Okay, great. Jim, would you like to see if any members of the public wish to make a comment?
Sure. It's a call for public comment. Members of the public may speak on any item on the agenda, and I reserve the right to limit the duration of public comment if necessary.
Kim, would you mind? I see 4 members of the public unmuting to see if anybody wants to introduce or make public comments.
You want me to unmute all of them?
Yeah, unmute all of them in case. Oh, and then did they then meet each other? No, now.
One did.
Okay. Would you like to make a public comment, the person that unmuted yourself?
Bill Hirsch with the AIDS Legal Referral Panel, just here to see the staff recommendations today. No other public comment. Thanks, though.
No one else is indicating they want to speak.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's no public comment, can we move to item 4, approval of the minutes for October 20th, Do we have any comments on the minutes? Changes? No? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay, so for a vote, Aklagi, Iskin,
I wasn't there, but yes, I'll take your word for it.
Mahoney, Schreiber, and Meeker.
Yes.
And yes.
Wonderful. The motion carries.
So I guess that brings us to item 5.1. To approve the legal services for children's late application for 23-24 HP4 funding. How late were they?
So they were 17 minutes late. And actually, we're going to combine that with item 5.2, if that's okay.
Okay, and you're going to do a presentation on 5.2?
Yes. So I will share my screen. Okay. So this is a presentation on items 5.1 and 5.2, primarily focusing on approval of the 2023-2024 homelessness prevention competitive grants. We'll cover some background, the review process, scores, funding recommendations, policy outcomes, a discussion, and then we'll move to a resolution. Just to remind everyone of the timeline, everything that's been crossed out is what we've completed already. Today, December 1st, we are working to have the committee recommend awards. On December 13th, the commission will approve the awards. And on January 1st, 2023, the grant period begins. So just as a reminder, the Budget Act of 2022 allocates $30 million for competitive grants to provide homelessness prevention legal services. Up to 5% of that amount, or $1.5 million, is available to cover Judicial Council and State Bar of California administrative costs. The Budget Act funds QLSPs and support centers to provide homelessness prevention services, and the remaining $28.5 million will be distributed for projects to use between January 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024 for a 1.5-year grant period. Permissible uses mirror those for HP3 and include eviction defense, other tenant defense assistance in landlord-tenant rental disputes, or services to prevent foreclosure for homeowners, including pre-eviction and eviction legal services, counseling, advice, and consultation, mediation, training, renter education, and representation. Additionally, legal services to improve habitability, increasing affordable housing, ensuring receipt of eligible income or benefits to improve housing stability, legal help for persons displaced because of domestic violence, and homelessness prevention, which is the catch-all category. Next, let's discuss the rubric, which was approved on October 20th, 2022 at our last meeting. The rubric is a tool to guide the evaluation of proposals. While it carries a lot of weight, scores do not guarantee funding. The committee and commission can exercise discretion to make awards that accomplish the goals of the Budget Act, which can include distributing grants statewide, helping a diversity of populations, for example, tenants, mobile homeowners, people with disabilities, people who have low English proficiency, etc., and to fund a diversity of interventions, for example, funding both QLSPs and support centers. And this generally entails a post-scoring analysis. Next is the rubric, which you are all familiar with. But just to go over everything, most of the categories include scores that are either 15 for exceeds expectations, 10 points for meets expectations, 5 points for below, and 0 points for not addressed. Those categories are administration, serves rural populations, serves underserved populations, project evaluation, and partnerships. As a reminder, preference points are articulated by the legislature for serving rural populations, serving underserved populations, and for partnerships or subgrants that were in effect as of June 30th, 2022. The last category of the rubric is project impact and strategies, and the committee opted for a slight modification to this scoring metric. Instead of fixed number categories, we worked in ranges. So for exceeds expectations, points could be between 21 and 25. For meets expectations, 11 to 20. Below expectations, 1 to 10, and not addressed, once again, was 0. And because this was a range, the scoring team discussed this category and everyone's individual scores, and then ultimately took the average after some adjustment to outliers. There were 46 applicants, 37 were QLSPs, 9 were support centers, none were law school clinical programs. The total requested amount was $25,668,544. The average ask was $558,012. The median was $447,200. Again, because there were $28.5 million available, the remaining funds, if every project were to be fully funded, would be $2,831,456. As a note, whereas HP2, HP3, and the consumer debt grants have a 3-year spend down period, HP4 is just 1.5 years. Additionally, HP4 will overlap with HP2 and 3. And as we will discuss later, one recommendation is for the commission to offer supplemental funding. Given the short timeline to review, the commission delegated authority to staff to score in consultation with the committee. The committee provides consultation before scoring by calibrating the rubric to a cross-section of proposals, during scoring by having the committee chair participate in all scoring sessions, and after scoring by discussing and adjusting the scoring team's results. Scores. There was a 5-person scoring team, which arrived at consensus scores for every proposal. This was comprised of 2 commissioners and 3 staff. Those individuals were Jim and Tammy, as well as myself, Dwan, and Alexa. The highest score was 93, the lowest was 52. That gave an average score of 71.39. The mode score was 69. The scoring team recommends funding for 45 out of 46 proposals and defers to the committee on the 46th, which we will discuss in detail later. Here's an outline of scores from highest to lowest. I'll give everyone a second to take a look. Okay. The scoring team considered, among other factors, proportionality of the project deliverables to the funding request, the degree of fiscal conservatism in the budget, considering the narrative explanations, the capacity to implement an impactful project related to organizational capacity, as well as past project performance, and sufficiency of the budget narrative and other explanations. With our recommendations, organizations would receive on average over 95.88% of their request, which is a total of $24,654,606. This would leave $3,845,394 remaining. And staff will ask each impacted applicant whether they would have to adjust deliverables if they received the recommended amount and that differed from their asked amount. Okay, so now we're going to go over some issues. There were 9 organizations that were mentioned in the memo as having outstanding issues. So we'll discuss those now. The first is a group of organizations that had technical issues. Asian Americans Advancing Justice Southern California is a QLSP in Los Angeles that would serve Los Angeles and Orange counties with their grant. California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform is a support center located in Berkeley that would serve the entire state with HP4 funds. Centro Legal de la Raza is a QLSP in Oakland that would serve Contra Costa County with HP4 funds. Elder Law and Advocacy is a QLSP located in San Diego that would serve Imperial and San Diego counties with this grant. Inner City Law Center is a QLSP in Los Angeles that would serve the entire state. And Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights is a QLSP located in San Francisco that would serve Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, Napa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Solano, and Sonoma counties with this grant. These organizations all had minor technical issues which were since resolved. So the scoring team recommends funding all of these projects at their full requested amounts, which can be seen here. Next is Eviction Defense Collaborative, which basically budgeted large sums for technology and other costs, and budgeted for capital additions. The scoring team asked them for more information and informed EDC that capital additions must be raised to the committee. EDC provided detailed explanations based on individual costs as well as the corresponding percentage FTEs. However, a few issues remained that we wanted to bring to your attention. First, they budgeted to build out the capacity and infrastructure of the Tenant Right to Counsel online portal and database, and did not base that budget amount on FTEs. Instead, they're requesting $30,000, which is 40% of the total cost for this item. The item will benefit EDC as well as their partnering Black-led community-based organizations. Additionally, EDC eliminated their capital additions, and they revised their budget down from $1,090,700 to $997,340. Accordingly, the scoring team recommends funding EDC at their new full requested amount.
Jennifer, I just want to let you and Jim know there's a member of the public that has their hand raised. I don't know if you want to take it now or later.
I'll let Jim decide.
Sure, we can take it now.
Kim, would you mind unmuting the person?
Yes, I'll unmute.
Hi, you've been unmuted. Would you like to make a public comment? Okay, I think it was a mistake. Their hand. just
So
down.
what was the capital item that was eliminated?
I would have to look it up. It was $7,500.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
I can look it up though if you're interested.
No, that's all right.
I think it was something, the office in Bayview Hunters Point, but I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And we would, and if they had gone forward with it, there's like a procedural, we would have to elevate it to you and then get documentation. So we were willing to facilitate that, but then they withdrew the request.
Correct. Okay. So this brings us to legal services for prisoners with children. And that's a support center that is located in Oakland, whose project would serve Alameda, Fresno, Kern, Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, Sacramento, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Ventura counties. Legal services for prisoners with children originally requested $568,000, then requested $537,200, and finally changed that request to $493,200 this morning, as I will now explain. LSPC's application, which the committee read and calibrated at the October 20, 2022 HP Funds Committee meeting, had several significant technical issues related to the budget and personnel, as well as other areas. Specifically, the budget did not clearly articulate what tasks each personnel would work on or how funds would be spent to achieve the project deliverables. Additionally, LSPC's application raised concerns about whether their deliverables were low relative to their proposed budget. Specifically, they proposed 3 webinars, 1 housing rights pamphlet for formerly incarcerated persons, distributing 1,000 of these pamphlets, supporting 10 new QLSPs or other organizations, and a 10% increase in housing-related support calls over 2021. The committee noted at the October meeting that LSPC's proposal would serve a uniquely underserved population, formerly incarcerated individuals at risk of homelessness. The scoring team agrees with this assessment. However, the scoring team wants to communicate the following concerns about the proposal itself. On behalf of the scoring team, staff corresponded extensively with LSPC via email and provided several opportunities for them to amend their proposal. Specifically, staff suggested increasing their deliverables and or lowering their total budget, correctly calculating FTEs, providing more detailed explanations about budget line items, filling out a blank proposed activities table, and providing more detail about how each personnel will contribute to the project. Staff also provided technical assistance via Zoom and through numerous phone calls. LSPC did not increase their deliverables, however, they did lower their total budget. They also articulated their deliverables more clearly. They went through several revisions before correctly calculating their personnel FTEs in a way that matched or ultimately lowered their total amount requested. And I can go into more detail if that's interesting, but ultimately they arrived at 4.66 FTEs, which includes 1.33 staff attorneys, 1 paralegal, 1.33 elder Freeman fellows, and 1 admin support. LSPC provided some additional detailed explanation about budget line items, specifically explaining how costs would be calculated for non-personnel and making sure salaries matched personnel FTEs. They filled out their proposed activities table. However, they did not completely explain how each personnel will contribute to the project deliverables, but began to do so in their budget narrative. The attorney is listed as responsible for legal expertise, the paralegal as document consultation, creation, and webinar support, and the other staff, which includes the elder Freeman fellows and admin, have the same descriptions as that of the paralegals. Their budget does not include employee benefits. $466,000 is allocated for total personnel, and the remaining $27,200 is allocated for total non-personnel. And I'm happy to share the categories if that's helpful. Because LSPC's application was only finalized as of 9 a.m. today, the scoring team defers to the committee about whether and how much to fund LSPC. The scoring team does, however, offer the following suggestion. If LSPC were to receive a grant, the funding should be conditional on their agreement to participate in further grant writing technical assistance with staff. Okay. Next, we have Wage Justice Center. I'm sorry, I didn't spell it out at the top. Wage Justice Center has had a discrepancy between their requested amount, which was $950,000, and their budgeted amount of $800,000. The scoring team asked them to resolve the discrepancy. In so doing, Wage Justice Center initially revised their budget up to $1,320,738 without consulting the scoring team. The scoring team then asked Wage Justice Center to revise their budget back to $800,000 in fairness to other applicants. Wage Justice Center explained the original discrepancy arose from forgetting to include the subgrant in their budgeted amount and asked that their original requested amount be considered so that they may fund their subgrant. Accordingly, the scoring team recommends funding WJC at the amount of $950,000.
Wait, sorry, can I ask that? So the original amount versus the revised amount, can you say those numbers again? So the
Sure. The
original
right.
was 950.
In one part of the application, it was 950. In other parts of the application, so on Form A, there's a question that says something like total requested amount, and they had 950. In the budget itself, they had 800.
Got it.
So what they now want 950, are you saying they forgot to put in the budget the subgrant?
They forgot to put in the subgrant, but when we asked them to revise, they initially revised up significantly. Out of fairness to other applicants, we asked them to go back to their original amount, which, because we didn't understand the discrepancy, we asked them to go back to 800,000. When they explained that the discrepancy was due to not remembering to fill in the sub-grant amount, we felt comfortable saying, okay, 950,000 makes sense. That's what we would recommend. Okay. So this table is the start of funding recommendations and demonstrates the difference between these two figures, the request, the recommended, and the difference. And really the only difference is Wage Justice Center. As you'll see, legal services for prisoners with children, we left blank because we weren't sure what to recommend or what the difference would be. Okay, policy outcomes. The recommended projects articulate a clear nexus to homelessness prevention. They serve rural, 33 proposals, and/or underserved communities, and this includes all proposals. 38 proposals include partnerships and/or subgrants. The proposals would serve every county, but focus on 33 in particular, as demonstrated in attachment E. There's a balance of QLSP and support center services with 37 QLSPs and 8 support centers, and nearly all scored exceeds expectations in at least one category, many of them in several. Additionally, a sampling of services that proposals will provide includes unlawful detainer representation, both broadly and for rural seniors, mobile home ownership defense, emergency housing vouchers for domestic violence survivors, behavioral health legal partnership for low-income undocumented tenants with disabilities, assistance with public benefits and employment authorization documents for undocumented monolingual workers, advocacy for foster youth with disabilities who are at risk of homelessness, wraparound services for veterans facing eviction, direct legal assistance to low-income community college survivors of domestic violence, and legal assistance for tenants with COVID-19 debt relief. The attachments for the memo include the HP4 competitive RFP, the scores and funding recommendations, the breakdown of scores, the profile sheets, and the map of recommended projects, excluding those that would be statewide. All right, now we have some time for discussion.
Well, what is the underserved or rural population that Wage Justice serves?
That Wage Justice serves. I will pull that up. Sorry. If anyone else from the scoring team can recall off the top of their head, please feel free to interject.
Eric, can you say your question again?
I just asked just to pick one example, which seemed urban to me. What is the rural or underserved population that Wage Justice serves? It may well. I just was curious to know what the answer is.
So they said, we will incorporate direct outreach at day labor hiring sites located in or near rural areas, including near the Antelope Valley in Ventura County and Altadena East / Angeles, National Forest East / Azusa, North Duarte, North Glendora, Pasadena East.
Okay.
In terms of underserved, they specified immigrant day laborers as an underserved population because they often don't qualify for or are fearful of using economic assistance. Their work is unpredictable, so time taken to seek legal assistance or advocate for their rights is a possible missed opportunity for work, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So a couple of questions for me. I don't know if I'm next in queue or not.
Go ahead.
So I guess logistically, the range of outcomes, depending on what decision is made about the funding level, if any, for LSPC, do we have like an active spreadsheet that would calibrate accordingly, or?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like
It's fully
is it
funded,
because
Chris.
we're undersubscribed, like we don't need to worry about any other amounts being adjusted? Is that right?
Yeah,
That's
there's,
correct.
Jennifer, you go back to that spreadsheet where you have the difference.
Okay.
Because Chris, the recommendation from the scoring team is to fully fund all that, and that's why that, sorry, you passed it.
I passed it.
No,
Oh,
you
no.
passed it with the, no, it's the one where there's a difference between what was being, and it was just the Wage Justice Center that was.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
So this, Chris, the
Yeah.
recommendation you'll see is to fully fund with the exception of Wage Justice Center. That's the 370,000 difference there. So it's less
Okay.
370,000. And then there is a pin in legal services for prisoners with children.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So two more sort of logistical questions. One is, I guess it sounds like there was quite a bit of dialogue between staff and LSPC. They were sort of the focus of our last meeting in terms of trying to offer technical assistance and whatnot. So I guess I'm looking for sort of a qualitative assessment about staff's experience, both with specific regard to LSPC, as well as applying that experience more abstractly to future grants and future potential grantees. So that's one question. And then the second question related is, if I heard you correctly, Jennifer, there was a notion that we could somehow approve contingent upon an agreement that, and I'm just wondering how we actually execute on that. I mean, I think the parties obviously would be in good faith, but yeah, how do we actually execute on that logistically? So those are my two.
Jennifer, I can help out with that second question.
Sure,
Okay.
go ahead.
One thing we could do, I don't know if we want to do it, but we could work with Brady to, in their grant agreement, have one additional clause for just them, that they're required to work with staff to engage in technical assistance. We could go that way if you wanted to formalize it.
Well, maybe the answer to the first question will help inform my feelings about the second.
Sure. So I'll answer that because I was the staff in contact with them. I'll say that LSPC was overwhelmingly very responsive to our requests. They got back to us overwhelmingly in a timely manner. So that was really positive. The staff that I was working with who submitted the grant was really enthusiastic and passionate about the work, very clearly dedicated. But I think there were some gaps in understanding of expectations. And I will note that the staff person is new. But basically there were a number of issues that took a lot of time to work out. One of them I think I glossed over was their FTEs started at 375,000, which I think demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the category as something that was calculated, I assume, hourly rather than by persons. But kind of sorting these details out took a lot of time. And I would say that although I appreciate the committee's, I agree with the committee's expectation that we would provide technical assistance to this organization where perhaps the staff are not all lawyers and are not necessarily coming from this type of grant writing experience. On the other hand, I will note that it was an amount of labor that is not replicable at a wide scale. I'm sorry. Is not replicable at a wide scale across multiple organizations for any one grant, I would say. Does that answer your question?
It does. Very, very well, actually. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so as a general matter, I think what came out of our last meeting and that scoring process was this recognition that you've now articulated, as helpful details around, which is that, these organizations with, I'll call them less sophisticated or less experienced staff actually filling out grant applications, they're actually, at a disadvantage, and some of these are they end up being perpetuated in spite of our feelings about the nature of the work that the grant would fund. So first of all, I'm grateful staff did this. I'm hopeful that the teaching and the process has some long-term institutional effects for this particular organization. It sort of speaks to me to figure out a way to address this. If it's not replicable on a widespread basis, how do we sort of institutionalize this process, or at least provide this resource to grantees? Because one of the most notable parts about this particular grant cycle and in this particular grant is its undersubscription. I mean, I have sort of just a general overarching concern that everybody gets 100%. In this particular group, it's great because, everybody's obviously qualified to do the work and the work is really needed. But I definitely don't think it's a great precedent that, you get what you ask for regardless of the quality of the work you're proposing, and I'm not suggesting that's what's happening here, or the quality of the grant. But it's also the case that when we are oversubscribed by grant proposals, that cut score is going to leave out important work and organizations that are doing important work based on not on the merit of the work or the quality of the work that would actually be done, but based on the shininess or the sufficiency of the application. So I don't know, these are sort of endemic and really foundational problems. I just want to put my finger on them, because what I hear Jennifer saying is like, yes, it was a very positive experience with bringing LSPC up to speed and sort of explaining what it is we were looking for. It's also not replicable on a widespread basis. And it also demonstrates that there was like a gap on the front end that makes me wonder, whether we should sort of address some of this. I mean, I feel like One Justice or else, Selena, I don't know, I don't think she's on the call, but somebody's going to end up having some sort of clearinghouse or resource. And Dwan, you may know more than me on this, but I guess I'm worried about some of this stuff more existentially.
I'll just add, Jennifer did spend a lot of time with this organization, and there was a lot of back and forth. Had it been a competitive round, I don't know if they would have made the cut. So I think Jennifer is correct in that the existing staff level that we have now, we wouldn't be able to do this more in a high volume. If the commission wanted to move in the direction of having the staff do this, we could. It would just make our admin go up. So that is one consideration, that we don't necessarily have the infrastructure right now to do this on a widespread basis. If that's something that we want to explore, we could further. But to answer your question, Chris, about like maybe outside of the state bar, yeah, I think it would be LAC or One Justice also has a program where they provide like infrastructure support and governance to programs. Maybe one of the things that we can ask them or flag for them is the grant making.
Well, first of all, sorry, thank you for that, but we should definitely flag it for them. I mean, a lot of these organizations are like living and dying on competitive grants and grant making and grant monies coming in. I mean, especially organizations like this, where there's not like a natural constituency to be donating, let alone the infrastructure within the organization to do the kind of outreach that would be necessary for development fundraising work.
So we can definitely flag for them. One thing I do want to underscore is like that type of technical assistance that Jennifer did give, we are in the best position to give it because we provide so many grants. A lot of these are specific to our grants, but you know, a lot of other funders use our grants as like a model and have adopted it. So we do know, like, you know, we have a lot of expertise in this. And that's why like having our staff do it is very fairly effective. But
would it be possible to develop a webinar that's given once a year?
Yeah, or a recording.
we could do that. And I know we're doing that, right, Jennifer, for evaluations?
Yes, yeah. And
but
we can include that, yeah.
I mean, it seems like that would be so valuable to underfunded, inexperienced staff at organizations whose work otherwise sort of gets short shrift because the gatekeeping function is dispositive. And I don't know, I just, you know, I think if we're going to be doing this DEI work, or at least running stuff through a DEI lens, this is really like essential to it in ways that, you know, this really highlighted. Anyway, Jennifer, I'm grateful for the time that you spent, and it seems like it did the trick. So I'm certainly in favor of of approving the grant for them. This, I dare say, I will get no disagreement. This was very clunky as a process for this particular organization, and they're obviously going to benefit in the immediate short term by getting a grant if that's where this committee goes. But yeah, that's not a sustainable model. And I guess we'll just sort of keep an eye on it. And given how good faith your interactions are, I wouldn't recommend altering the grant agreement for this organization. Seems like they were receptive and thirsty for the technical expertise you were offering. So I'm sufficiently, you know, satisfied that they would continue to be.
Yeah, I personally don't think that's necessary either. And if they decide to not engage with us, we would report it back to the commission. I don't think we're going to be in that position though at all. I think they would welcome the additional assistance.
I'll just say I agree with
Eric,
that.
I think, Eric, did you have something that you were say? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I had to step away for a minute, but I think I got the gist of the discussion. Is the difference, and forgive me if you've already covered this, but is the difference between what we experienced with this organization and what would be a better outcome is just that they need to hire a more sophisticated financial person or grant writer? I mean, would that pretty much solve the problem or no?
I think that is one approach, but something that is unique about this organization is that they seem to have a number of staff who are impacted or formerly impacted persons. And I think that I'll speak for myself personally. I think there's great value in that. So it's kind of a give and take for if they were to hire a grant writer who perhaps had more previous qualifications, they might lose the personal connection to the community, which was part of, I think, why the staff that I worked with was so dedicated, because yeah, it really shone through in that sense. So just something to consider.
Well, it's also the case that, you know, those kinds of investments are very difficult budgetarily to make when you don't have the income coming in on the front end. So, you know, it's like we could hire more, you know, there's a relationship between the number of IRS agents and the amount of money we get back in tax enforcement, for example. But you got to decide and have the resources on the front end to be able to reap the rewards on the back end. So
Yeah, no, I hear that. I was actually, that reminds me of another question I was going to ask. Do they get, is this their only money that they get from the state bar? Or do they get other money from the state bar?
Yeah, they have an IOLTA and EF grant. I can't remember if they have other discretionary grants, but their allocation is, if I recall, it's not small. I can't remember the amount.
not small, or
It's not small. I don't think they're like a tiny program, right? Jennifer, do you know that?
I can pull it. It'll just probably take a minute because it's Smart Simple. Sorry.
No, I can pull it up. Let me find it for you guys. While
Okay.
Again, we don't, obviously we don't have the right to dictate their personnel decisions. I'm not suggesting we should, but I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm not totally following the comment Jennifer made that hiring a poor professional grant person would impact their ability to work with impacted people or have those people on staff. But it would cost money. Surely it would cost money. I acknowledge that.
I mean, I don't want to speak for Jennifer. Just to respond to that, Eric, I think part of the point she was making that I took away was that the mission alignment of the organization and its work is actually manifest in who works for the organization. So a lot of the individuals who are working for the organization are formerly incarcerated individuals. And so part of what makes the organization go, so to speak, and gives it its mission is the fact that, you know, you're talking about a population that isn't finding work, let's say, or doing this type of work in other organizations, but could do it here. Your point is valid. You know, it's not like one person would be unable to relate, or that you'd lose the sort of thread if you hired somebody that was not formally incarcerated or whatever, but or didn't have a connection to that community.
So I have their grant award for 2022. It's about 640,000, and it's just IOLTA and EF, so they don't have any other discretionary grants. So, you know, this would be their first, which is kind of a nice to build that infrastructure.
Yeah, that's not huge. Okay.
No, it's not huge, but it's not small though. It's not tiny, like, but yeah, not huge.
Well, I'm yeah, as far as it pertains to LSPC, I would say thank you, and I'd be comfortable recommending and don't feel like we need to.
What about the amount though, Chris and Eric? Because I think the scoring team struggled with what to recommend to you as an amount. Fund.
Well, I guess. Is there a recommendation that came out of the seeing the application this morning? I mean, having not seen the subsequent revisions, it's hard for me to have an opinion.
Yeah, Jennifer, can you run it down? Because I know one thing that we had suggested, I believe it was yesterday or the day before when the scoring team met, is perhaps like shaving off the fractional FTE.
Sure. So, right, just to review, they settled on 4.66 FTEs, which includes 1.33 staff attorneys, 1 paralegal, 1.33 elder Freeman fellows, and 1 admin support person. So if we were to do that, suggestion, it would be to go from 1 1/3 staff attorneys to 1, and 1 1/3 elder Freeman fellows to 1. And I'll just note that the way that the grant was written did not suggest that the 1 FTE for any of the positions indicated a a single individual working full-time. Each of the positions were comprised of 3 or 4 individuals working for part of their time. So that's something for the committee to keep in mind.
So if we were to implement that suggestion, what would the dollars be?
Give me a
And-
few minutes to do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and can you do that? Like, can you reverse engineer a number that would
can.
work for the organization? I'll just, not to step on your toes, Jim, but I guess, I don't know if someone from LSPC is on this call.
I
in
don't
this
believe I
meeting.
saw them.
Okay.
If someone is, can you raise your hand? But I don't think any of those names to me, I'm associating with the organization. Because the other concern we had was that the budget wasn't commensurate with the deliverables. It felt
Well,
low for the deliverables.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns at the front end, and even after these revisions, doesn't sound like that got resolved.
Mm-mm.
So,
And that's part of the problem. Like, I think Jennifer has asked them several times and it hasn't been resolved.
right,
After
they
the
haven't
generation.
adjusted.
Yeah.
Well, look, at some point you have to take them at their word that this is what they're going to deliver, and you can't, cajole an organization to deliver more than it's prepared to cajole, but or deliver, excuse me, but you can adjust your funding expectations accordingly. Certainly in a more competitive grant environment, we would.
Oh, most definitely, having served on the scoring teams for HP3 and HP4, if this had been the HP3 grant proposal, they would not have been funded. One of the reasons why we're spending time on this is that this grant period is so much shorter than the others, and it's the 4th time around. So people, didn't request for the total amount of money that we had. So we have some surplusage, and the fact that this was one of the ones that the commission or committee as a whole scored, and everybody felt favorable about the mission of this particular organization. That's why it's coming back.
Well, then let me just say, logistical question. This committee is going to be recommending to the full commission, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
So it might even be possible to really like hold this out. To approve with this, for the full commission to take up and decide as a full commission based on the clarification that happens between now and whatever, the 13th or whatever it is.
Let me just interject really quickly and say I did the math, and if we were to decrease the 1.3 attorneys to 1 and 1.33 Elder Freeman Fellows to 1, the total budget request would go down to $394,700.
So about 100,000 less.
Yes.
So what are the remaining concerns though, Chris? Even with that reduction, we're still not confident of what?
No, I don't. I think that would address a large part of it. The issue was with this organization, but not just this organization alone, as you know, is like we've always been concerned about bang for the buck. So like in terms of the breadth of a particular proposal or how much the organizations were planning to do with the money mattered to us in our considerations. And so what I hear is that the organization didn't really make any upward adjustment to its deliverables, even when it gained a better understanding of what the FTE calculation was meant to do. And here we are reducing the FTE calculation and again, leaving deliverables constant.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the considerations basically. I think that I'd be comfortable with the lower number that you just announced, Jennifer, if that's actually accurate and agreed to by the organization.
We can
Not the-
also like, if you guys are generally like okay with that number, Jennifer can go back to the organization and then firm it up. But just to play devil's advocate, and this is one I've gone back and forth, is that if we lower it, we might even get lower deliverables because their model is their model. And Jennifer's already gone back many, many times. And it seems like this is what they can produce with that 500,000. So a part of me is like, we either accept it and we want to support this program, help them build their infrastructure. They're still going to do good work as they are and try to improve on them. Because $100,000, I mean, we have 3 million. And I struggle with this because, you know, compared to some of these other projects, the deliverables are very low. So anyways, I just put that out there.
100 is 100. I mean, that's my feeling. Like, I don't think we should, I mean, I realize it's a relatively, it's, you know, 1/30 of what we've got to whatever, but just the same, it still matters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess what I would say is in the ultimate conversation that Jennifer has with the organization, if the organization is presented with like, you know, look, this is the deliverable you said you can create, provide, produce, whatever. And this is the money you have. Is that a deal that you're able to make? And if the organization says yes, then great. We've just, you know, pressed them to be a little bit more efficient with their resources.
So are we then requiring that they keep their deliverables at the amount with less money? Or maybe require is a strong word, but more or less in that area.
Well, does it seem, I mean, what are they? I mean, maybe you don't have to give me the exact number, but I mean, does it seem reasonable that they could?
I can
They
give
wanted
you
to
the
do,
exact.
yeah, it was a number of flyers that they're producing that the lawyers are going to write up and with help from their paralegals. I don't see how that would be reduced any. I think they said something like 3 webinars and assisting a number of, I think it was 10 qualified legal service providers, but they
That's-
didn't really explain what they were going to do with those qualified legal service providers.
Jim is correct. So it's creating 1 new pamphlet for formerly incarcerated persons, distributing 1,000 of said pamphlet, hosting 3 webinars, connecting in some capacity or serving in some capacity 10 new QLSPs or CBOs, and a 10% increase in housing related calls over their 2021 numbers. Those were their deliverables.
I mean, if we had to ballpark that, I think we thought that was more appropriately 2 FTEs instead of 4 something for that amount of deliverables.
And we would still be giving them 4 with this reduced amount.
I'm fine pushing them like that. They can say no. And we do have time before the commission meets. If there's some development and compelling case, we can adjust it as a commission, full commission. But
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it feels like a fair compromise to me. Especially given the fact that there were some, you know, much worse alternatives.
Okay. Jennifer, Jim, do you have what you need then for this?
Yes, fine. I like the 394,700 figure.
Okay, so let me move back to next is the proposed resolution resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee accepts the late application by Legal Services for Children, which again was 17 minutes late, and further resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee recommends the 2023 to 2024 homelessness prevention competitive grant recipients and amounts as described herein. And I can show again, these we've already discussed, and I would need to fill in legal services for prisoners with children. Sorry, let me fill that in really quickly. Said the amount was that.
I
Sorry.
think that works. And then if there are modifications, then we can do it just at the commission level.
And are we going to have a proposal for the surplus or the remainder?
Yes, that's next or soon after.
Okay.
Do you want a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay, so for the vote, Aklagi, Iskin,
Yes, abstain as to wage justice.
Mahoney, Schreiber,
Yes.
any abstentions?
Legal aid at work, I think, Chris? Or
I think I'm done now with that. 'Cause
okay, you're off. Okay.
Yeah, because my case is finished.
Okay.
But are they not, they're not an applicant, right? Legal aid at work.
I didn't think they were,
No.
and I don't think Impact Fund is either. And I don't think CLESPA is either.
I'm sorry. Is this the was this the
It's
HP4?
HP4, yeah.
HP, yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe I looked at the wrong one. I thought legal aid at work was, so my apologies.
No problem. And then Meeker,
Yes, and abstained as to Public Law Center.
okay, so the motion carries. Wonderful. Next, we have item 5.3, discuss distribution of HP4 funds remaining after initial awards. Okay. So the proposal is, if sufficient funds remain, which they do, and the committee finds that a resolution would be appropriate, it may update the following. Resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission, Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee recommends to the commission that the 2023-2024 Homelessness Prevention HP4 competitive grant recipients be allowed to apply for supplemental funding from the, I have to do the math, remaining from the initial awards. Supplemental funding would be to provide sub-grants to the community-based organizations and local jurisdictions on HP4 projects. I will need just a second to do the actual math. My apologies.
Looks like, Dwan, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry. I didn't review this piece of the Jennifer. I apologize for not raising
Sure.
it earlier, but do we want to just limit it to HP4 grant recipients, or do we want to open it up more widely? And I've only heard anecdotally from 2 or 3 programs that did not apply for HP4, but had another HP round that said if we opened it up for supplemental, their project could use it. Like it was an HP2, I think, project for one, and HP3 for another one.
If we did that, so if this were limited to HP4, we've already reviewed their proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't have to go through a whole round. Well, actually, let me ask, what would we have to do to evaluate requests for supplemental funding?
I think
Okay.
we make it a very streamlined application. Very, 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 a couple questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions about what they would do with that, and then the budget for it. But we wouldn't do a whole application, right? It's kind of like partnership, Eric, when you guys did the supplemental funding, when you found out you had like, I think $2 million extra. It's an abbreviated application period.
So for HP, so for other projects and the other HP programs, if they want supplemental funding, would they be limited to the difference, if any, between what they requested and what they were funded, or could they just ask for any amount of supplemental funding subject to support in their application? I mean, what's the idea here? I guess is what I'm trying to understand.
I think the idea is, is to let them ask for an undefined amount at this time, because for these applications, they've already maxed out. We're fully funding, right? Pretty much all of them. So it'd have to go beyond that. And I would imagine if we were going to be fair, we would apply that same kind of rationale for the other applicants, non-HP4.
And
Would
But I'm
that
just
meet-
throwing it out there. I don't have a strong opinion. I just wanted to flag that.
Would that be allowed by the statute?
Could we do that, Brady? See, we have the $3 million left and we wanted to like release another round of funding. Is it only limited to, do we only have to limit it to programs that applied in this round? Or could we open it up to, we could, right? I don't see why there would be a limitation. It's up to the commission how you want to structure distribution.
Yeah,
And
What-
Tuan, are you still recommending that it's for partners, community-based organizations, not just other things like more FTE or more pamphlets or more webinars?
I think it should be more, again, I don't feel, I'm okay with this recommendation, but I think you can also open it up and be more flexible. It's also only 3 million. It's kind of just hard to predict how many will come in. So I don't know if limiting it would,
I'm not sure why we would limit it in that way. Like if the organization you just talked about
yeah,
wants to add another FTE or something, or part of an FTE,
Yeah.
shouldn't they be able to do that if they can support it?
yeah, I wonder if we don't limit it.
Just to clarify, so then would that be not limiting it at all or limiting it to organizations with existing discretionary grants? Just want that clarification.
Well, there are two questions right now. One is whether we open up to applicants beyond the HP4 applicants. And then the second is, do we limit it to just providing sub-grants to community-based organizations, that partnership piece? I think there are two questions.
So you're talking about people who currently have an HP3 grant
An
to apply for
HP3,
these funds.
yeah, or two.
Or two's not spent out?
Doesn't two have one more year, Jennifer?
2 has 1 more year, and
Okay.
right, we'll discuss 2 in a little bit as well. So
The only thing I'd be concerned about is if we open it up to people with HP2 and HP3, and we don't limit it to the type of stuff that they can apply for, that we're going to get way more than $3 million
Yeah.
worth of requests.
Yes. Yes.
one idea could be to limit it to further partnerships and subgrants, as well as hiring, whether that meant additional FTEs, or I've spoken to some organizations about concerns about retention with regards to cost of living and inflation. But I haven't run that by Tuan or anyone, so just to.
But I
just a
think I'm
thought.
inclined to agree with Eric and like, why limit ourselves now?
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing is, to the extent it's a streamlined process and it's hyper competitive, people are going to be faced with a choice about how ambitious to be and what it could realistically do. And they'll probably tailor their results or their requests accordingly. Right? I mean, if you can't ask for $1 million and you're only going to ask for 200 or whatever, what are you going to do with that money?
Mhm. Well, and we usually do like a pre-webinar, a webinar before we release. We can give
Yeah.
folks ideas like, if you wanted to hire an additional attorney or additional paralegal, that seems appropriate given 3 million, you know, we can give some parameters, some suggestions.
Do we want to provide any guidance or limitations on the range of the amount range for potential grants? I presume we don't want to give the whole 3 million to one organization.
Yeah, I think a range is always helpful for programs.
I mean, I'm thinking 25 to, I know, what are you thinking? What's in your mind?
Do you want to have just another committee meeting? Maybe the commission just delegates, or yeah, and then like we can work with Jim to come up with some recommendations and bring it back so we can fully
But we
consider
gotta
it.
go, but this money has to be spent by what, the middle of 2024?
The end of what?
End
when
of
is it?
June 2024.
So we want to do it pretty quickly.
We have a March meeting.
That might make sense. I don't know what other people
Yeah.
think. Instead of just doing this on the fly.
I think that makes more sense so we can think through
Agreed.
all the parameters.
Agree.
And so you want us to come up with several different competing suggestions so that the committee as a whole can vote on?
Yeah, I think with one recommendation, with it all kind of ironed out, like what's the funding range? Are there, preference points, stuff like that?
And by the way, if depending on when this opens back up, it will that will make a difference in terms of if somebody receives this 3 months before it has to be completely spent. Fair?
I think we try to do it a year, as close to a year as possible. If we
Right.
meet in March, we might be able to make that sometime in the summertime. So maybe it's not quite a year, but close to that.
Can we
Okay.
can we ask the commission to delegate to the committee the ability to establish the parameters and to make the decisions without having to go back to the commission?
Yeah, I think that's what we would ask. Can we just ask for that, Brady, or do we need a motion from this committee to recommend that? I don't think we need a motion, right?
Just to ask the committee?
Yeah, ask the
The
commission to
commission.
delegate authority to this committee.
I mean, you can, but the chair and staff can just put it on the agenda.
Okay.
So
We're talking at the next meeting, right? We have time.
Yeah, the commission meeting, yeah.
on the 13th,
hmm
so we don't need an official resolution.
Well, if we need a resolution, then you have to modify this resolution. I was just trying to get you
Of
out
course.
of not having to redo a metal.
Yeah, I mean, the power's in the commission, so whether we want to officially request it or, just. What matters is the commission grants the authority,
Yeah.
not how we ask.
And we
for it.
agendized it, right, Jennifer, on the commission, we agendized
I believe it's agendized.
Yeah.
I can double check right now.
okay. So then, is that okay? So then we don't have to wordsmith this and then we'll vote on the first motion?
Right. Yes.
It is agendized, yes.
I'm sorry, you already voted on, I'm sorry, excuse me, you already voted on the first motion, which is to approve the grant. This is its own, okay.
So the idea is we'll come up with a resolution to be voted on at the commission meeting that will essentially give the committee authority to handle this $3 million.
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not coming up with the resolution now.
No.
Okay.
Unless somebody can instantly wordsmith
Yeah,
something.
Jennifer, you and I and Brady can come up with that resolution. It's
Okay, perfect.
We do have a top lawyer for the state bar on this call, you realize.
Just I was going back through the Budget Act language, and I don't see. I mean, basically, as long as we use it for competitive grants, whether we gave it back to these or had a new competitive grant round, anything would be fine as long as we're using it for these purposes.
Okay, Jennifer. So I think we're on to the next agenda.
Wonderful. Okay. So next is 5.4 to approve the description of the Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee. I guess I can go back to, let me, perfect.
And I'll just
There
give the context to this while Jennifer pulls this up. As you recall, the Rules Committee was tasked with updating the functional matrix, which is actually like a spreadsheet, and they turned it into a narrative description of what the roles and responsibility of the commission versus staff. They eliminated the board of trustees. And then within that, there's also a description for each of the committees. And then the committees are tasked with doing that description for the respective committee. So this is what that description is.
Great, thank you, Juan. And I will go ahead and pull that up. Can everyone?
And Chris and Jim worked on this, drafting this.
Yes. Can everyone read that, or should I make it a little
larger,
bit bigger?
Jennifer?
Sure. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay, I'll read it. Resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee recommends the following description as its charge. The Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee is charged with administering funding for homelessness prevention legal aid, recognizing that civil legal problems both cause and stem from homelessness. California creates grants for HP legal services. The committee oversees grant making, compliance, and reporting for these awards. For formula funds, the committee reviews project eligibility and budgets. For competitive grants, it approves requests for proposals, designs scoring rubrics, and scores submissions. The committee typically recommends awards to the full commission for approval. It also oversees grantee compliance and reporting. This is to ensure adherence to federal and state requirements and the strategic use of public dollars to prevent homelessness at the individual and systemic levels. Since 2019, HP awards have been multi-year, spanning 18 to 37 months, and use federal coronavirus state fiscal recovery and state national mortgage special deposit and general funds.
First use of the word compliance on line 5.
Yes.
What is that explained?
I would defer to Jim
It's-
as one of the authors.
Yeah, that was kind of a Jim question, I guess.
Well,
Compliance
yeah, that
with
was-
eligibility or something, or?
Compliance with eligibility, and also I view that as compliance with their grant. That is, they're
Yeah.
producing the deliverables that they say they're going to produce, and those kinds of things.
I think
Then
it's,
what-
yeah, compliance generally. So it's how I read it is the grant agreement, what they set out to put in their application, and all the kind of the related trust fund commission rules and policies attached to that. And there are a lot.
Wouldn't
I
it-
guess.
Wouldn't it be more limited to like this grant? Because if it's about whether they're truly a LSP or qualified support center, that
Oh,
would be
okay, you're,
eligible, you know.
but there's also
Yeah.
like standards of financial management. Don't we subject them to like some of those more general terms and conditions too?
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
guess
you're right,
maybe
not
grant compliance would make sense because that would.
grant compliance.
Yes, I would just, I'd appreciate a little bit. Otherwise, I don't. And it's actually grantee grant compliance.
grantee. Jennifer, could you change that?
Grantee compliance, yes.
With it, should we say with grant awards or something, or with grant requirements or something like that?
I don't think that's necessary, but if you do, I think,
Okay, I'm good.
Any other questions about that?
No, I'd move to approve it as it's now reflected on the screen, with that edit.
Second,
Okay, Aklagi, Iskin,
yes.
Mahoney, Schreiber,
Yes.
Meeker.
Yes.
The motion carries. Wonderful. Okay. Item 5.5 is a staff report on the HP 1, 2, and 3 grants. Okay, so basically this is a report to provide an overview of the HP 1, 2, and 3 reports thus far. These grant reporting periods ranged from 6 months for HP3, which is just underway, to 21 months and 18 months for HP1, which are final. And as you can see on this slide, it details exactly when the grant started. HP1 was before the pandemic, HP2 was about a year into the pandemic, and HP3 started in 2021 and 2022, about 2 years into the pandemic. For HP3, the reports cover just the first 6 to 7 months of funding. So as a note about the presentation, the committee refined the reporting requirements starting with HP2, for example, to require a main benefit for services that created an attorney-client relationship. This presentation focuses on HP2 and 3, weaving in HP1 data where available and appropriate. The term HP needs addressed refers to the homelessness prevention legal needs that grantees addressed with an attorney-client relationship, including providing legal advice only. It refers to the goal of the service, for example, to prevent an eviction. Starting with HP2, programs also reported on whether they could verify success. So this table presents the services totals for HP1, 2, and 3, noting that in terms of certain numbers, such as household members for needs addressed, lump sum payments, monthly payments, lump sum cost savings, and monthly cost savings, that numbers were rounded down. I'll give everyone a minute to take a look at that. Okay. In terms of HP needs addressed, we have figures for HP1, 2, and 3 in terms of percentages. These included prevented loss of current housing, such as eviction, stopped unfair or illegal behavior or otherwise enforced housing rights, negotiated or facilitated a soft landing for tenants moving out, obtained or preserved access to housing, advocated for public benefits to prevent homelessness, enforced rights to safe and habitable housing, obtained other housing law benefit, and all other HP needs addressed. For HP1, the number of data points was 8,873, excluding blank main benefits. For HP2, it is 7,589, and for HP3, thus far, it's 6,940. Okay. And other HP needs included things such as consumer, employment, family domestic violence law, and occasionally immigration. Rural versus urban HP needs addressed. So this is divided by county type using a report, a 2019 report by the California Access to Justice Commission, which grouped counties into the categories of rural, rural urban, urban rural, and urban. And that report looked at the proportion of residents living below the poverty line in rural and frontier MSSAs. And then for HP2, the numbers of data points, again, is 7,589, and for HP3, it's 6,940. And you can see the distribution of rural versus urban there. Okay, so needs addressed by gender for HP2 and HP3. In both instances, more women were had their needs addressed than men, and the numbers were slightly different, but within the same ballpark.
What, any reason for that?
I'm going to be very honest here and say that I received these slides from Chris, so I would encourage you to ask that question at the commission meeting.
Okay.
I can help, and Jim too, because we were heavily involved in this. I think
Great.
we were going to make some we had some theories, but I think with Jim's help, we try to steer away from having those, right, Jim? If you recall with this data point.
Yeah, well, the problem is it's client gender, and it doesn't take into effect the total household that's impacted by these homeless prevention services.
That's a good point.
Well, I mean, that might explain some of it, but I guess I'd say why is there such a disproportionality in terms of the clients that are coming forward like that? I don't presume anything nefarious. I just find it kind of shocking. I mean, that's a lot of data points.
Yeah, and then in the report itself that we remitted to the Judicial Council, I think there was one version where we pointed out like there was a disproportionality, and then we stripped that at the advice of some of the people that working group. So
That could be something also for us to look into for the next Access to Justice report to see if those numbers match on. Okay, in terms of needs addressed by race and ethnicity, as you can see, the majority of needs were addressed were for white and Hispanic Latino individuals for both HP2 and 3. These demographics made up 61% of individuals helped with HP2 and 63% of individuals helped with HP3. And white individuals were the group most helped for both HP2 and 3. Okay. Needs addressed by age. Again, the demographic most helped were adults ages 18 to 59 in both HP2 and 3. Seniors were the second most helped group. And then there was some variance. There were unknowns for HP2 as well as children. And in HP3, there were children as well. Underserved communities in HP needs addressed. So in addition to the aforementioned demographic categories, there were a few specific communities highlighted. Clients with disabilities accounted for 36% of HP2 needs addressed and 45% of HP3 needs addressed. And this is in consideration of 23% of California's population being disabled. Clients with limited English proficiency, 15% of HP2 needs addressed, and again, 15% of HP3 needs addressed. And this is pretty similar to the percent of the California population at 17%. Likewise, clients who are veterans were 6% of both HP2 and HP3 needs addressed, and they comprise 5% of California's population. In terms of needs addressed by area of law, you'll see a comparison for both raw numbers and percentages for HP2 and 3. The categories here are housing, income maintenance, immigration, family and domestic violence, health and long-term care, consumer finance, employment and disability rights, and miscellaneous. And a note on miscellaneous, this refers to relevant miscellaneous main benefit codes, such as obtained, preserved, increased affordable housing, and removed barriers that impact employment benefits, housing, and self-sufficiency. But as you can see, the overwhelming needs addressed by area of law were housing for both HP2 and HP3. Next, we have needs addressed by highest level of service provided for HP2 and HP3. These included counsel and advice, which was the majority, limited action, settle without litigation, settle with litigation, agency decision, court decision, and finally extensive services. Other services or events for HP2. We have a number of categories: housing, family, domestic violence, employment, income maintenance, and other. And we looked at those in terms of self-representation clinics, workshops and trainings, and outreach events. For HP3, other services and events had the same categories, or I'm not sure if they were the same categories, I'm sorry. But the categories were employment, health and long-term care, housing, income maintenance, and other. And just again, keep in mind, these numbers look a little bit low, but this is only 6 or 7 months into HP3 reporting. Oh, I'm sorry. That's all I have for that item. I'm happy to try to field questions, and Dwan, I'm sure, could help facilitate that along with Jim as well.
And we've already finished the reports for HP2 and HP3. They're with the Judicial Council right now being reviewed, and then they will be shared, HP3 with the Department of Finance, not with HP2. We've been told that if they can finish their review by December 13th, then we'll post it for the commission meeting. If not, then it'll be shared after we do the presentation for the commission.
It's a lot of numbers.
There's a lot more data. This is the curated version, and you'll see in the report all the, there's many appendixes, and they have like it broken down by each organization, some of them by counties. There's just a lot of information.
So big picture,
This is more big picture, yeah, and it's still, it's a lot of information.
has the money been well spent?
Well, that's a good question for you all to kind of think about, because we talked about that a lot in the working group that helped draft the report and review all the data.
There's still a lot of tents out on the streets. Not that that means anything.
And I might point out too that the some of the ethnic breakdowns in comparison to the state as a whole, we couldn't get hold of the data, but would more accurate comparison would be the ethnic breakdowns for the poverty population as a state, at least at the 200% level.
Well, so I had this, oh, go, sorry, Jim.
I was just saying they couldn't get hold of that data, that breakdown.
Well, yeah, I had the same thought, and this was a question I thought maybe you actually could answer, but it seems to me like, you know, to the extent that legal services are actually serving clients based on their representative number in the broader California population, that somewhat surprised me, because I would think that we would, for example, see, you know, more veterans, or, you know, a disproportionate percentage within the community of people who are experiencing homelessness related issues, that there'd be an overrepresentation of certain populations. And I think in the first number that was shown there, it may have been people with disabilities.
That one was, yeah, more.
Was more, and that that
Interesting.
obviously, at least to me, that did not surprise me, because I would think that that would reflect the disproportionate percentage of individuals with disabilities who were actually experiencing homelessness related issues.
But with the veterans, I think one thing to keep in mind is, you know, many of our programs serve veterans, but there's only a very few that serve them, like just like focused on veterans work. Veterans Legal Institute is one of them. And I don't know if there's a correlation between that.
Another aspect of this is that some of this comes down to self-reporting, and some of these categories are, or in some instances, and some of these categories don't necessarily necessitate people self-reporting, right?
Right,
Someone
you might
might
identify as being disabled, but not also a veteran, for example.
right, or you might be a veteran but not identify yourself as such if you're getting services for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But that second category, I think I agree with you, Chris, that clients with limited English proficiency, because I think anecdotally, we know that our programs, not even anecdotally, I think we have a list of like the language assistance that they provide for each program, and it's high. So that doesn't quite match with what we've heard and what we have, but yeah, that number feels like it should be a lot higher.
So many thoughts.
Does it feel like with the amount of money that's been distributed that it's the level of services?
I mean, I guess I just think as a public policy matter, it's just, you know, this is what's so challenging, and I've shared this concern publicly and privately, which is that legal services organizations do a specific thing, and they can help clients with a specific thing. It might tangentially touch on a homeless or a housing issue. But as a public policy matter, my concern with this whole process has always been that the legislature will somehow hold legal services organizations to an unfair account of the impact that they're having in terms of solving the endemic problem of the unhoused. And I think like that continues to be my concern because, this is like building or digging a hole at the beach, right? Like we could continue to fund and fund and fund, and we'd be solving really discrete problems without ever addressing more systemic and potentially more costly things that really predate any kind of legal services need. So, I think this data will be helpful, but honestly, the way I'm thinking about it as a public policy matter is we can go back to the legislature and say, here's this need, you gave money, it helped increase services to people. It either did or did not have an overall impact on the unhoused population in California. So maybe the solution to public policy either is or isn't consistent with this model of just trying to solve legal problems rather than prevent them. Because I do think like legal services organizations, yes, they are trying to prevent some homelessness related issues, but many of them, as we all know, are coming in prior to, or excuse me, after some event has occurred. So, and just given the nature of the legal system and the delay associated and how busy all the courts are, et cetera, someone can become unhoused very quickly. And a legal services solution, even if fast, might not be fast enough. So I'll be very interested to sort of dig into the data a lot more than the high level here, because I think it should inform what we go back to the legislature with in terms of, using this as an ongoing source of funding, if it's something that we believe is, and the legal services community believes is worthwhile.
I wonder if there's a way, I hear what you're saying, Chris, that we're really only addressing one piece of a very large problem, but I wonder if there's some science that can or social science that can somehow correlate the number of legal services with a reduction in homelessness. Big picture. I don't know if there is, but it seems like there should be a correlation. I'm sure with all these millions that we're spending and all these data points that we're creating, we are in fact either reducing or at least limiting homelessness in some way. It just would be nice to be able to say that.
Well, we have a problem code, not problem code, an outcome code that's like prevents homelessness. And that I think that HO1, Jennifer or Alexa, you might want to correct me, is the one where we get a lot of benefits that's reported. So we have it but it's a moment in time, right? So it's at the point where the case is closed. What we don't do, and this is like the gold standard in evaluations, and Jim can talk more about this, that we don't track it like 6 months out, right? A year out. We don't follow that client. We have it just for that moment in time when that case is closed, that we were successful, the program was successful in achieving that when the case is closed, prevented a instance of homelessness.
Right, and if you want to read some better evaluations on that, if you look at the Shriver projects, that they do at least spend some money in tracking these clients 6 months down the road to see what's happened. But the problem is the money that we give, we're giving it to providers, and they're spending their money on representing clients. They're not spending their money on evaluation.
No.
So they don't track it. That's why you'd have to look at the Shriver reports.
Well,
Now,
and the Shriver was very expensive. I think that was like $1 million, $2 million evaluation.
Right.
Or you might know more or have the figures, but it was a very expensive evaluation too.
It is. And so the other thing too is that we have some data with household data as opposed to client data. And that gives, I think, a better picture as far as what policymakers would want to look at as far as bang for the buck. Because just helping a single client's not taking into effect that you're helping the entire household when you're talking about homeless issues and keeping them housed. So and I think do the household data, does that get all stuck in the appendices?
In the report, it might actually be your table that's pulled out. It's in the appendices as well, but that might be its own table as well. This is, again, an edited version. The report has a lot more tables and charts and graphs and data.
Right, but can you move forward a couple slides?
Sure, and I just do want to be a little bit mindful. I know that someone has to leave. Stop me when I get to the slide you want, but I know someone has to leave at 3.
Yeah,
and we
that's
have
good right
another-
there.
Okay, great.
So I mean, just to get to your point there about impact, Jim, there's no question housing security has so many downstream impacts. So, you know, I don't know, to Eric's question, like if there's a magic number that, you know, can be derived, you know, on a scale of 1 to 100 blank effectiveness, you know, that aggregates all of this. I mean, it has impacts in schools and it has impacts on health and on community health. So there's lots of things. I think the sort of public policy question legal services organizations are trying to provide is like, if you look at this highest level of service, right? Like, there's not really like, I don't know what extensive services is. I'm assuming that settle with litigation, agency decision, and court decision all involve some sort of legal services, like going to a court or an administrative proceeding of some kind. And I guess I would just say, like, you know, intervention at that stage is, it doesn't diminish security, or excuse me, it doesn't enhance security, housing security, because it's already been rendered insecure. So yeah, it's just an inherent limitation of legal services. This was when we first started this off, we had HP1 and we did the convening. And the thing that we said to the community at the time was, look, this is not really like just do more UD cases. And so that's why, you know, I'm anxious to sort of dig into the data, because counseling and advice is not really that specific. You know, it really does encompass a lot, and it's hard to know what, you know, at what stage legal services was getting involved. The people that I talked to, you know, can I be evicted? What would that look like? You know, anyway, these are huge issues, so I don't need to belabor it any more than I have.
Okay, well, I think this has been a productive conversation. I personally, while I'm clicking to the last item, think that it'll be interesting to see how HP4 comes into play with the partnerships and subgrants, because some of those are to organizations that provide different homelessness prevention services besides legal aid. So I would be curious to see that data as well. But the last item is 5.6, homelessness prevention grant monitoring. First, we reported on monitoring of Inland County's legal services and Asian American Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus at the committee's meeting on October 20th. Background on ICLS, they reported high main benefits for the first 6 to 7 months of its HP3 grants. Staff asked them to document that it had avoided supplanting existing resources with HP3 dollars. ICLS has provided documentation, such as other grant agreements, showing that sufficient other funding ended before or as HP3 began. Additionally, it provided information about positions that it created, such as project expansion, using HP3 funds. This reassures staff that ICLS has not supplanted existing resources as of this time. Staff has finished its investigation and thanks ICLS for its full cooperation. Next is Advancing Justice. Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus has yet to spend its 3-year HP2 formula grant of $251,271 as of September, which was about 21 months into the 36-month grant period. On November 2nd, staff asked Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus to submit a spending plan by November 11th. Asian Law Caucus submitted a plan that was only 5 sentences and emphasized hiring in January and March of 2023, which is the final year of the grant. Furthermore, the plan lacked any financial details, such as a budget, about how the program would spend the entire award in about a year. Staff invited Asian Law Caucus to provide additional information if it could before today's meeting, and they provided a revised budget yesterday. Again, the revised budget indicates that they plan to use the majority of their 3 years of funding to support staff, including hiring 2 additional lawyers and 2 additional community advocates. This proposal raises important practical and policy concerns. For an organization that reported staff attrition and difficulties hiring, how feasible is it to hire several staff between now and March 1st, 2023, which is when the committee will next meet? Second, this budget obviously deviates considerably from their original proposal and deliverables, which raises a number of questions, such as what is the best use of the funding, what will do the most good, and what is fair. So staff have 2 proposals for how to move forward. They're not written out here, but basically the first one is to require Asian Law Caucus to return funds from either year 1 or from years 1 and 2. And the second option is to see whether Asian Law Caucus is able to hire the 4 staff positions they articulated in their new budget by the March 1st, 2023 HP Funds Committee meeting. The meeting agenda for this is to discuss HP 2 and 3 budget revisions. And if ALC demonstrates they have hired the necessary staff and can therefore stay on track with their new budget, no further action would be required. However, if they have not, the committee could then require ALC to return the funds from either year 1 or from years 1 and 2.
Any sense of how much of a hardship that would be on the organization?
Which aspect? Asking them to return funds?
Yeah. I mean, is it just sitting there?
They haven't spent $1 of money. So I don't like it. It's a matter of remitting the funds to us. I think the hardship is on us to redistribute that, just to be completely frank with you. But they forgot about the grant until we brought it up for them. And it's 2 years of a 3-year grant. They haven't hired for the grant. They haven't begun any work on the grant.
Are they gonna? I mean, would they?
Well, that's the question. So they have said now what they've come back and said that they want to maintain the entire grant, and then they're suggesting ramping up their hiring, and they'll spend all 3 years down in 1 year. I don't know how realistic that is, but then there's also then this equity concern, right? This is they haven't done anything in 2 years of a 3-year grant.
I think it's also important to note that if they were to hire in March, that would leave until I believe the end of the grant period, which is December of 2023. And I was in communications with them regarding this, and it was asked if their plan to hire was realistic, and beyond providing a spend down plan with the timeline from now until the end of the grant period. That was the only way it was addressed. It was never explicitly said that it is realistic for them to hire for this position for the remainder of the grant period.
I hate to be heartless. I'm usually pretty soft, bleeding heart, but to like spending it fast and or us waiting on them to spend it fast, maybe, and then having to distribute on a shorter timeline seems like a worse outcome for staff than putting this money back into the pot. Can we combine HP2 and HP4 even?
Are you asking what we would do with the funds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We asked Brady this already. Brady, you're on mute.
Everything's blending together in my mind. Let me find what I sent you yesterday.
This is the one, Brady, where I think we said we can redistribute it as formula. So we
Yeah,
would-
it's got to be to the formula, to this formula.
to this formula. So what we would do, and it's a lot of work for us, so but then we feel you, Chris, because I think it's kind of unacceptable. They didn't even come let us know. We had to reach out to them, and that's when they remembered they had this grant. But it is a lot of work for us, right? Because we're gonna have to then email all the formula grantees to see if they got additional allocation. Can they spend it? And then we have to draft like a supplemental grant agreement and then cut checks.
Yeah.
But we're not unwilling to do it because this seems really egregious. That's why we're bringing it to your attention.
Yeah, how much money do they get?
So
50, I
the
think.
total, sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're correct. The total is here. It's $251,271, which breaks down to $83,757 per year. So if we asked for 1 year back, that's what it would be. And if we asked for 2 years back, that would be, oh, I did that wrong.
What,
You could
I mean,
ask
why-
for 3 years back. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
that's
why-
You can ask for 3 years back, the full.
they're in breach of the agreement.
Mhm.
Right. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting not to. I just wanted to provide the figure. If we ask for 2 years back, it's $167,514 back.
I hate to make staff do more, but I'd vote to get it all back and redistribute. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's what we're leaning, and that's why we wanted to bring it to your attention. And the other thing that Alexa has not said is she's given them a lot of deadlines and they haven't met them. They just did, and that's why we're getting you information like, and not, because she's asked several times, I don't know how many times, and they keep blowing the deadline.
My deadline for them initially, I had emailed them asking to provide a more in-depth spend down plan right before the holiday break, giving them till end of day on Monday. They asked for an extension till Tuesday, end of day, which I did. They didn't submit anything. And then Wednesday morning, I emailed them, letting them know that we'll have to use their original plan. And then it was at that moment they submitted their more in-depth spend down plan.
So since they haven't been spending any money, have they been reporting any results?
Well, that was the discrepancy. So they reported something, but they had no spend down. So that's when Alexa and Chris went back to them and was like, how come you have numbers reported, but you have nothing on expenditures? And they said that was a mistake.
Which part of it?
The mistake was that they reported outcomes because they haven't done anything on the grant.
They explained that they reported outcomes from a different grant, basically.
Well, I agree with Chris. I think we ought to take it all back.
Yeah.
So so then that would sound something like return its, okay, so it would just be return its
Award.
Well, it'd be reallocate its award, right? We haven't given them any money. They're
No,
not.
they've
we already
gotten
cut
2
the check.
years.
They get a yearly
No,
check.
yeah.
Oh, they got a yearly check.
So we
Okay.
got to recuperate
Ooh.
2 years and we won't issue their 3rd year payment.
Gotcha.
okay, so that is, I wrote that number down.
What if they don't give it back? Do we have to sue
No,
them?
they have to give it back. They will give it back to us. Because they have other grants from the state,
okay.
so.
So we can garnish their other grants?
No. Self-help.
Does that look, does the highlighted portion look like what we want it to read, or does anyone have edits?
It's the entire amount, right? 200.
So if we've only given them 2 years, it would be
Yeah.
this much, but if
And
we've,
yeah, I'd say that it's, return the first 2 installments of its blah, blah, blah. And that, sorry, blah, blah, blah isn't helpful to you. Yeah.
okay,
Discontinue, right? The 3rd installment, like we're not.
And that it not receive its 3rd installment of the grant. There you go.
So moved.
Brady, do
And
we
it's
need
actually-
to bring this to the
Isn't
commission? or
it
can
its failure to begin spending its grant as of today? I mean, they haven't still
Yeah.
had.
I'm sorry, who moved?
Well, I will withdraw that motion and then now move to what's been reflected in these edits currently on the screen. That's me,
Okay.
Chris. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, Aklagi, Iskin,
Yes.
Mahoney, Schreiber,
Yep.
Meeker.
Yes.
The motion carries. And that is all we have, actually.
I was just gonna ask Brady, do we need to, can this stop at the committee or do we need to bring this to the commission?
What was the initial, what was the initial delegation of power? Do you recall from HP2? It's been a
I
while.
think HP2, the commission approved the award.
The commission approved the award. Yeah, I think it's been more recent that we've been doing more delegations. So I think we should just have a quick item on this.
Okay,
Me too.
okay, so Jennifer, we're gonna have to amend the December 13th, but the posting deadline's tomorrow, so you can work with Kim.
Okay, I'll let Kim and Shannon know for this. Okay, so that is all that I have. Jim, I'll hand it back to you.
Good job,
Oh.
Jennifer. Done.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job, Jennifer.
Yep.
Thanks.
Lots of data there. Yeah, so if we don't have anything else, I guess we can adjourn.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye,
Thank you,
everyone.
staff.
Later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Juan.